right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. I am your host, David Rosen, and I don't normally say that, but hi everybody, I'm David Rosen. I am really excited about this one. As people who have listened to the show for a while know, this movie we're talking about today, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, from writer-director Charlie Kaufman, has been at the top of my most awaited list for a couple of years now as I tracked its development, and I'm finally getting to talk about the movie in detail. We've got returning to the show after he joined me for the episode on Charlie Kaufman's novel, Ant Kind. We've got Kris Krainock joining me to talk about this movie, and I think we have a great conversation coming up for you guys. Lots of puzzle pieces, lots of things to talk about, and we're going to get into that in a second, but I do want to remind you, as always, make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever it is you listen to podcasts. We're on, of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, TuneIn, wherever it is you're listening to it right now. You could subscribe right there. And you could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And, all the other stuff that goes along with being a podcast. Do all those things. Share, like, review, all those things. We appreciate it, and we love the feedback we've been getting lately and all the support we've been getting. It's just been awesome, and thank you everybody that's been out there listening and letting us know how much you like the show. So with that said, let's get into this conversation because we have a lot to talk about with I'm Thinking of Ending Things. All right, so back on the show with us today, we've got Kris Krainock. How you doing, Kris?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
I am great. I'm very happy that this movie that we're about to talk about finally is out. It's something I've been waiting for a long time, and I'm very excited to finally talk about it on the podcast. And of course, I wanted to have you back after we talked about Charlie Kaufman's Ant Kind to talk about I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Where are you in the process of processing a new Charlie Kaufman piece of art?
So I think I'm processed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I've processed. I've watched it twice now,
Mhm.
and I liked the film a lot. I mean, just like a super basic review is that I liked it, and I really enjoyed it. But it was
Mhm.
a unique experience for me, and so we can talk about that a little bit more as we go. But I think it was one of the most unique Kaufman experiences, and not for the reason I expected. So I think
Okay.
I'm kind of processing not the content itself, but I feel
Sure.
like I have a fairly good handle on it, of course. But that's it's very compartmentalized, so I'll be able to see different things about it as time goes on. But for the most part,
Mhm.
I feel like I have a pretty good handle on it. It's more about like my reaction to it that I'm kind of processing, and like what I think
Okay.
about it as a congealed piece is that's kind of what I'm processing. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think when the credits first rolled, it was one thing, and then it continued to be things as I continued to think about it. And I feel like that is the case with a movie like this or, a Charlie Kaufman project in general. You're always going to kind of be in that kind of a place after you finish watching it the first time. And, while there's certain things that reveal themselves while you're watching, some of it doesn't come until after, some of it doesn't come until that second viewing. And I certainly Synecdoche, New York, I felt the same way. Anomalisa, I felt the same way. Not so much Eternal Sunshine, I don't think. But, we'll end up talking about a lot of his projects along the way in this conversation, just like we did with Ant Kind, I'm
Right.
sure. But that's a very Charlie Kaufman thing, and his the people that are like him, his contemporaries. But yeah, I think I'm at a place with this movie, which I know a lot of people. I know some people who like kind of checked out in the middle and it was just too much for them. I know a lot of people who loved it and kind of some people would call this a love it or hate it kind of movie and nothing in between, but I don't think that's kind of the reaction I'm seeing. I'm kind of seeing all across the board as far as what people are thinking of this one. But with that said, I think we should just jump into some puzzle pieces. I know you got a bunch, I got a bunch here. So what do you got for your first one?
All right. Well, Well, let me just say one quick thing before I say my first one. I think what's really unique about this Charlie Kaufman film is that it was released to the Netflix audience.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you have like the Netflix riffraff are like, what is this? To where I
Hmm.
had to go and like I had 3.5 minutes to catch Anomalisa in a theater. I had to like
Right.
pounce on an usher to get into the
Yeah.
room before the movie was out of
Yeah.
theaters.
I
So
didn't know you yet at that time, but I probably fought my way past you just to get in the theater first.
right.
So,
So yeah,
yeah.
real quick, the fact that we're getting this like totally unique reaction experience is because it was dumped on a streaming platform that everyone in the world has, and everyone's like, "What
Well,
is this?" And it's like, "What? This is nothing. This is Kaufman Light. I'm
let's be fair. Let's be fair though for the listeners. You use the word dumped, and I would use that word too a lot of the times. But this movie today probably really wouldn't get financed. Only and I say that people use that argument with Netflix all the time, and I always rail against them. I'm like, no, that's bullshit. These kind of movies do get financed all the time. You just need to know where to look for them. But a Charlie Kaufman movie doesn't get financed, is
Yeah,
what
he
I
has
mean
a
by that.
particularly hard time, which is
Y-
weird. But we'll
yeah,
get that's another rabbit hole we can explore more. My
sure,
puzzle piece. I'm gonna start with a heady one. You know me.
sure.
I don't have those blue collar pieces. Excuse me. No,
Yes.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm gonna start with Ingmar Bergman's "Through a Glass Darkly."
Okay.
For a very superficial reason, and then a little bit more of a layered reason. The first one is the use of wallpaper.
Mm,
So the very opening shots of I'm thinking of ending things is this kind of montage of the uniquely patterned wallpaper that is in this house that in the center of the film we go to this house, and the wallpaper in Through a Glass Darkly plays a very specific part and has a very thematic purpose. And the film at large, kind of Through a Glass Darkly, is about madness in a lot of ways. It's about many
mm,
other things. It's a very layered tapestry. But essentially, the main character is kind of nutty. And as
mm,
we all know, with piecing it together, there's going to be a lot of spoilers here. This is a movie that you should definitely have seen before listening because it's a spoiler,
definitely.
like type movie. You want to, there's a lot of mystery to it. But essentially, the main character is crazy, and I
Hmm.
feel like Kaufman, who is such a dialogue heavy filmmaker, was looking for visual ways to communicate some of the more subtextual things about the
Hmm.
characters. And I think he did that by taking a page out of the Bergman playbook and made this very intricate, beautiful wallpaper pattern that kind of is the backdrop. And that's iconically used in Through a Glass Darkly.
Right, right. And I think I've seen some interviews with him, over the past couple of weeks about this, and like I know a lot of that, like the mental state of the character and twists and things like that, were things that were spelled out in the Ian Reid novel, which we should mention. This was originally a book and it is adapted. There's, from what I understand, quite a few changes from the book, but the biggest of all is not making it about those kind of twists and things, and kind of instead weaving them in and making it things that you just kind of pick up on along the way.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a blanket feeling that I have about the film, and we can kind of again go back and unpack it more as we go. But like for me, I felt like this was actually one of Charlie's weaker outings as a writer, but one of his
Okay.
strongest outings as a director.
Mm,
I think the movie is somewhat simplistic, which I know is like going against the grain with a lot of people's view of the film. But I mean,
sure.
coming from Synecdoche, New York, this is child's play. I mean, this is not as layered as that film, and it didn't really give. I didn't really have the mental gymnastics that I had with some of the other films, and that's not necessarily a negative thing. I like
Hmm.
it. It's just different, but what I really thought he was in command of in this outing was the atmosphere, the vibe.
Sure.
And I feel like he was really strong as a director for this particular piece, to where his writing has always been center stage. And so, yeah,
Hmm.
interestingly enough, kind of coming back to like the visual of it and embedding these things more subliminally into the film. Kaufman isn't always known for his subtlety, and I think this is by
Right.
far his one of his most subtle films which is
Right.
dangerously maybe saying it might be one of his simpler films. But by far, I mean, the atmosphere was the strongest part. I mean, I think it was very, it absorbed me a lot in a lot of ways. I think
Mhm.
that was his strength as a director. So that was really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think that is exciting, and for someone who hasn't been given a lot of chances to direct, it's great to see him get a chance to display what fans of his knew he has, but it's like he just doesn't get those opportunities, and so hopefully he's got a lot of projects, as he always does. He has a lot of projects in development, and hopefully we continue to see some of this stuff from him, whether it's Netflix or hopefully going back into theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about what the future holds. My first reaction was that I was excited that he was doing an adaptation in a more traditional way. I mean, obviously he
Right.
did adaptation, but he made
Hmm.
that basically an original film. Essentially, it's hard to view that as a traditional adaptation. So to
Sure.
have him use a source material and be relatively faithful. I mean, as faithful as the average film director, interpreting somebody else's work. That was like
Hmm.
new territory for him, I thought. And I like when
Yeah.
artists go to new places and try different things. So
Hmm.
I mean, the very thing that I'm criticizing is also one of the greatest strengths of the film. It's just one of those
Sure.
things. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just he went somewhere, he took a risk, and some parts succeeded and some parts didn't work quite as well. But I'm just excited he's evolving.
Yeah, it's in some strange ways because for how weird a movie it is, it's also kind of his more accessible movie
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
than a lot of the others.
Without a doubt. I mean, from Synecdoche, I think he kind of peaked in terms of
Hmm.
like, we're going to really make it hard on the audience because
Right.
Anomalisa was fairly straightforward. I mean,
Hmm.
there's elements of surrealism, and that's going to be part of my next puzzle piece. But I'll let you go first, of course. But
Hmm.
essentially, I mean, this was one of the most straightforward surreal films that he's done, and yeah, he kind of left some of that kind of heady cerebral stuff on the side, and it's much more of an emotional experience, as was Anomalisa.
Hmm.
There's all kinds
For
of like
sure.
references to psychiatric disorders and Anomalisa, but for the most part, it's an emotional film.
Sure.
And so yeah, it's interesting. I think he's actually becoming a little bit more refined in a way,
Hmm.
and maybe he's just kind of like whet my appetite for these very heady, cerebral, like. And I've been thinking about Synecdoche, New York, for like 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like
Right. Right.
so it's one of the great achievements of modern cinema, and like oh, it's like Finnegan's Wake of movies. So then you go and have a movie like this, which is fairly straightforward, and it kind of leaves something to desire.
Hmm.
But like I said, not to repeat myself too much, but it's just such a great example of him as a director. So it's cool. So I've really enjoyed it. But what's your puzzle piece?
So yeah, I'll go on to my first one, and this one kind of speaks a little bit to that whole, releasing it to the Netflix masses and what they're going to get from it and where their confusions are going to come from. And I thought of the Coen brothers No Country for Old Men,
Mm.
which is a little bit out there as far as the movie itself and the actual story being told is not very similar. But the thing that to me made me think of this comparison is the whole misdirection of who this story is about and what the
Ooh, yeah.
character is. And that's one thing that I have gotten for years. I've had friends who are just kind of just casual movie watchers who have said, "What was that No Country for Old Men about?" And they ask me of all people. I don't know, but the whole thing of like not realizing that, oh, this movie is kind of, it starts off, you're thinking it's about one thing and it's about this other character altogether, and then especially with the title, which I think when it was first announced, his new movie is called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, I immediately thought it's about suicide. Then the trailer comes out and it's like, oh, it's actually about ending a relationship. And
Mhm.
then I watched the movie and we're back to that, that initial gut reaction from the title. So it's like a whole lot of misdirection that kind of plays with your perception of what the movie is going to be and of how you should watch the movie and what you should be paying attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a great puzzle piece. I hadn't thought of it, but I think it really it is exactly kind of what you're describing, the misdirection element. And it's funny when people ask me about No Country for Old Men, I say just say the title out loud very slowly.
Right.
Yeah, and the answer is in there.
That's
You
right.
know, and that's some people I know. There's a filmmaker friend of mine that like hates No Country for Old Men, and it's not because he doesn't get it. He gets it, but he hates it
Mhm.
anyway because he just demands that our hero is given justice.
Right. Yeah, and which is understandable because it's a great thriller as a
Yeah,
straightforward thing, but then that's not really what this
the
thing's
film is
going to be
about. Yeah,
about
it's
by
a
the end.
metaphor, but not
Yeah.
everyone. Those that doesn't sit right with everybody. So I think
Right.
you're right on. I think you hit it right on the nose about the comparison of No Country, but also too, I feel like the Coens are the most mainstream surrealists that we currently have. I mean,
Right.
I feel
Right.
like Charlie Kaufman pushes the envelope to a place where maybe some of the average moviegoer doesn't want to follow, which is why he has a hard time getting financed and the Coens are winning Oscars. I mean, the
Mhm.
Coens are extremely surreal. They just present it in such a way that's either more accessible or funnier or maybe a little bit more homespun. We identify with these characters. They're typically not neurotic intellectuals. You know, the thing about Coens is they make movies about idiots for the most part.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
we kind of like that. That's more comforting to us. But the approaches are very similar. I mean,
Sure.
I can definitely see there being a lineage between, or at least a camaraderie between those two schools of filmmaking. And so, yeah, there's something about Kaufman that I think frightens people, and there's some type of delivery that the Coens uh, that they've mastered that allows the general audience to accept it more anyway. But yeah, but definitely a great comparison, and they've ushered in mainstream surrealism, so I can see
Oh yeah.
Kaufman being in debt to them.
For sure. So what do you got for your next piece?
Well, speaking of surrealism, I'm gonna have to go with the great surrealist Louise Buñuel, maybe the greatest of all surrealist film directors. A movie in particular called The Exterminating Angel.
Okay.
Now, The Exterminating Angel is much more a comment on the bourgeois society, which was often the target of Buñuel's aim of his satire. He was always kind of mocking the bourgeois or the more higher status quo. And so I don't feel like I'm thinking of ending things has that kind of large sweep, but I think that it shares a lot in common in terms of its approach. So
Mhm.
with the exterminating angel, it's about people that go to a dinner party and then they can't leave. They can't physically leave the room, and it's
Mhm.
never explicitly explained why or what's stopping them exactly. This is where the metaphor takes over, right? We don't have anything anchoring us to the narrative. There's nothing
Sure.
logical, but it's just a metaphor. To where I think that Kaufman's a little bit more sly in this, and he gives us the illusion of reality a little bit longer. There's like weird things happening, but I don't think we are thinking that this is a larger metaphor for something else as we're watching it. But I
Mhm.
definitely think there's a lineage between the surrealist works of Buñuel and Kaufman, and I also
Sure.
think that it's the kind of claustrophobic quality of the two movies. I think that also have in common. Exterminating Angel is very claustrophobic because of this
Mhm.
dinner party and all these people crammed into a room and they can't leave. And there's an element to that in the centerpiece of I'm thinking of ending things with the farmhouse. There's this kind
Right.
of like purgatory quality about the farmhouse. And so yeah, there's
Well,
just
I would say the book ending like car scenes as well because partially because they're in the middle of a blizzard and they can't really get off the road and also just being stuck in a car for like 20 minutes at a time is
yeah, that was a
those
little
long
shocking.
scenes.
That was a
Yeah.
little shocking to me because so this is maybe a little too personal and I'll keep it brief, but like as a filmmaker who's always also struggling with financing and this and that and the other thing, sometimes you have to scale back concepts and
Mhm.
ideas that you can actually make, for pragmatic reasons, logistical reasons. And I'm always trying to make movies that aren't two people talking because that's
Right.
like the least cinematic thing imaginable. So it kind of like stuck in my craw a little bit that like an hour out of this 2 hour and 15-minute movie, there's just like two people in a car.
Mhm. Sure.
And I mean, it was done beautifully, and it's excellent and
Yeah,
atmosphere.
it helps when you have that cinematographer. What is it? Lucas Zoll
Oh
or
yeah,
something like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, he made it visually beautiful, but it's still two ping pong ball heads talking back and forth. So and for an extended period of time. So I think that to me, maybe just because I have some experience in that area, it felt like an idea being scaled back. Now, I haven't read the source novel, so I don't know if the novel takes place predominantly in a car. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's a faithful thing to the book, but it just felt like Kaufman being like, "Well, I can do this for no money."
Right.
And
Which
so,
which you understand why he would have that thought, with
sure,
the
I have a
trouble he's had.
constantly. Yeah, I have a constantly, which is why I
Yeah.
don't think it's an objective criticism. I mean, I think the
Right,
majority of
right.
people watching won't even occur to them. But I'm just always trying to get out of cars. I'm trying to get out of diners. I'm trying to get out of houses. These are just not intrinsically cinematic things.
Mhm.
And especially two people talking is just like the anti-cinema to me. Yeah, I'm very
Mhm.
I'm very suspicious of the spoken word. And what Kaufman does well is he has characters talking, but without saying much. They
Mhm.
say a lot, but they don't tell us anything in terms of the narrative or the plot. So that's impressive, and that's good, and that's a nice misdirection. But there is a lot of bobbleheads in the film, and that was just like
Mhm.
that was a little aside, but that was one thing I noticed.
Okay. Well, you went with surreal with your last piece, so I'm gonna go with surreal with my next piece. And of course, uh, Charlie Kaufman compared to David Lynch a lot. I've seen in reviews, I've seen Inland Empire cited as something of a comparison, but I'm gonna go with Eraserhead.
Nice.
Because of just the weird, creepy dinner scene with the family. And this is something that struck me directly from the trailer alone, and then continued into the movie, and just how strange and just off-putting everything within that house is. And yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of weirdness put in there. And like we were saying earlier, like in some ways it's a little more accessible for a Kaufman film, but in other ways it's very out there and very weird the way things happen. And especially once you start realizing the changes happening with the parents, and clearly their ages are changing, and that is just like kind of another level to that surrealism. And I love how, as you start to like think about that, it really it really speaks to what the overall film is trying to say, and where Charlie is kind of trying to lead you to realizing what the overall thing is about and who it's about and everything.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's funny because my next puzzle piece was going to be Lynch as well, so that's a perfect thing to kind of discuss for just for a sec. To me,
Sure.
this was the most Lynchian. One of
Mm.
the things that I'm so impressed with as a Kaufman fan is that he really feels unique,
Mhm.
and this felt like the least unique, in my
Mhm.
opinion. I didn't know if, as much as I admire his command of the atmosphere and the tone of the movie, I felt this was kind of like a tone poem of a movie, and I really admire that directorial skill. I did think that this was the least authentic of his movies,
Mhm.
and I think it might be just coincidence. I feel like the film is the book is a thriller. They describe the book as a thriller, and I have not read the book, but as you know, like if you look up genre of the book, it's considered a thriller, and maybe
Mhm.
Kaufman mixed with a thriller gives you Lynch. I mean, it's possible that it's
Sure.
just like mixing colors to get another color. That's kind of that it has this Lynchian vibe. Yeah, that was something that was kind of interesting to me, and a little bit of an unfair criticism. I'm not trying to be overly hard on the movie. I really did like it, so I don't want to like
Yeah.
bash it or anything. But it just feels like when you look at Synecdoche, New York, there's nothing like it. And you look at
Right.
Adaptation, there's nothing like it. You look at
Right.
Being John Malkovich, there's nothing like it. With Eternal Sunshine, even, which is basically a indie mid 2000s rom com, it's still very fresh and unique, even
Sure.
within those confines of the genre. So when I watched this film, I was just like a little surprised that it felt like somebody else could have directed it.
Do you feel in a way you combine Charlie Kaufman with Netflix resources, and you get A24? Do you
Yeah,
feel that at all?
yeah, for sure. I feel like it kind of feels like this is like a very crude comparison, but do you remember Zach and Miri Make a Porno?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so this is not a puzzle piece. This is like a weird not this is not a puzzle piece,
Okay.
but essentially Kevin Smith came out and was like, I was trying to make a Judd Apatow film, and I
Mm,
shouldn't have done that. And I definitely feel like Kaufman was like trying to make a Lynch A24 Netflix movie. I don't know if it was conscious. I mean, I respect him as an artist so much that I don't think he has these kind of primitive thoughts of like, well, I want to make an A24 movie, or I want to make a
Right.
Lynch movie. I highly doubt that it's a conscious effort, and I do really respect Kaufman as an artist, but I think maybe he might have stumbled into it by mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And his exercise as a director, which again, to repeat myself, is really excellent. I think it was such a strong showing of that. He might have kind of tripped into somebody else's style.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing, and Lynch makes you work more for it. I mean, not to sound like I have all the answers here, but when I first watched this movie, and we show the old guy out the window in the first like 5 minutes, the main character, the female character, is sitting outside waiting for Jesse Plemons to pick him up or pick her up, excuse me. And then they show the old guy janitor looking out the window, dressed in a flannel shirt, and then they cut back to her, and then they cut back to the guy again, but now it's Jesse Plemons in the same shirt. I was like, oh, it's probably the same person.
Right.
And there was like, I was surprised by the size of the breadcrumbs. Essentially, the breadcrumbs were a little bit too big for me. I didn't when it was over. I was like, oh, okay. So the thing I thought of within the first 5 minutes was kind of where we were at.
Sure.
So I was a little disappointed in that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense as a fair criticism, but at the same time, maybe he's trying to give, like you said, the size of the breadcrumbs. Maybe he's trying to give the audience a little bit of a bone because he wants people to like him again.
No.
You know what I mean? To give him some more chance to make movies.
No, I mean, yeah, I guess that's possible, but it's like, do I understand Inland Empire? No.
Right.
Do I understand Mulholland Drive? I've seen Mulholland Drive 30 times. I don't understand a goddamn moment of it.
Well, wait. So I'm curious. You said your next puzzle piece was going to be Lynch too. Which in particular, was it one in particular?
No, it wasn't actually. It was just going to be like the work of David Lynch.
Okay, cool.
I could see like a Mulholland Drive, because the thing is that okay. So here, and this is like, I don't want to get too sidetracked. And I think it's your puzzle piece turn, right? Oh no, it's technically mine, right? Because
yours is the works of David Lynch. So
okay, so but in a nutshell, I feel like this is a movie geek, a movie nerd movie, which is interesting to me. What I think where it really succeeds is that this is a movie nerd movie without being obvious about it. This movie is actually about movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But no one, I think the average audience member who isn't a movie nerd like us won't necessarily feel that. There are some films that feel like, oh, this is a meta about film type movie. And I don't think it feels like one of those, even though it is one of those. So that's I think that was a really cool, that's a success that Kaufman did, is he like basically made a movie nerd movie, but totally in camouflage. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I love that about it.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, and so I'll just throw out a quick puzzle piece. I was going to say Fellini's 8.5.
Okay, sure.
And that's just an overtly surrealist movie, but it's about a filmmaker trying to get a film made. And it's much more, it's like the ultimate movie geek movie, the movie about making movies. So I feel like every movie that's about movies is somehow in debt to Fellini's 8.5. But this was just superbly subtle in terms of how much it was a reference to other films. Or how much it was an ode to cinema in general. So that was my puzzle piece for that.
Okay. Well, I think let's use that as a bridge to a brief tangent that is technically puzzle pieces here. We did this, of course, with Aunt Kind, and we should do this here a little bit, but we should talk about Charlie Kaufman work and how it compares here, because I do think that there are parallels. First of all, there were a lot of things that, and this was right from the trailer, when the trailer came out, but then continued throughout the movie, things that shockingly reminded me of things in Aunt Kind. A lot of the obsession with the clown, the side of the road restaurant, the failing memories, the deteriorating thoughts and things blending into one another, which of course also brings you back to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where as he's going deeper and deeper into the memories, and it's hard to know where one starts and where one ends, and which are real and which are imaginations mixed in with the dreams and the memories, and then of course I think more than anything, I feel like even though, like you said, this is a little more accessible and all that, I do think this is in a lot of ways like a companion piece to Synecdoche, New York, in that it deals with, a person who's kind of at their end and who, is dealing with a lot of mental issues and with the end of their life.
Oh yeah, no, I can see that for sure. I think what's cool is not only is it a companion, but I think it's almost an answer, because
Sure.
Synecdoche, we're from Caden's perspective, and he's seeing, we're not sure what's real and what isn't for what he's seeing. And now we are actually seeing the film from the perspective of the projection. What
Right.
I think is honestly the stroke of genius that this movie has, like what is really special and great about this movie, is the fact that the film is from the perspective of a figment of the guy's imagination.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, making the narrator a figment of his imagination was a stroke of genius. I don't know if that comes from the book, if that was something that Charlie decided, but either way, it's a fantastic choice and a way to kind of reinvent this subgenre, because the surrealist going inside the guy's mind and having a subjective point of view has been done to death.
Sure.
And so how do you make it really interesting and new? And I think he succeeded there very much. And so I think that's kind of maybe an answer to Synecdoche.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to put it, and a great way to like kind of tie that thought up of this being so closely related to his other work.
Right.
So what do you got for your next piece?
Well, sticking with this meta theme about movies, I'm going to have to say Ben Stiller's 1996 The Cable Guy.
Okay, I love that.
Because that is a character that only gets information from movies and television.
Okay.
And as we find out, the main character, the Jesse Plemons character, is a man who develops not only his desires, but his memories based on film, television, and literature.
Absolutely.
So he is basically Chip Douglas. This is a continuation of the Chip Douglas story, in my opinion.
I think that is so great. I hadn't thought of that at all, and I love it. I think that's such a great puzzle piece and makes so much sense, and really ropes in a really important part of this film, which is that whole aspect of him getting so much of his thoughts and memories and ideas from things that he's read and watched and listened to and all that. And I think that that's such an interesting aspect of the movie, and I love how that puzzle piece kind of ties that in.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, it came to me when I was laughing hysterically during the final speech, which is word for word from A Beautiful Mind.
Right.
Yeah, that is the funniest shit happening in American cinema today. That was so good. Now, and it dawned on me that this guy is essentially Chip Douglas, the Jim Carrey character from the Cable Guy, the guy who,
Sure.
But it's also powerful. I mean, besides it being hilarious, it was also kind of powerful because we are so, as an audience, we are so influenced by entertainment. I mean, we have a red-haired clown as a president right now because of entertainment, because the dangers of entertainment. And so, and also too, our views on love, our views on what a healthy relationship is. This all comes from pop music, and it's dangerous. We're not critical thinkers enough to really be able to discern what is real and what's entertainment anymore. So the fact that we're so highly influenced by entertainment that our own memories are tainted by it. I mean, our expectations of what this existence is supposed to be, that has completely been hijacked by how inundated we are with not only. I mean, that's the thing is, I wish it was an equal balance of art and entertainment, but art is clubbed into submission by entertainment. So, that's the real issue, is that we're not getting sensible, intelligent, complex influences. We're getting trash, and it's being fed into our brains. And love is supposed to be toxic, and it's supposed to be crying. I listen to Adele music, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this lady? This lady is sick. How dare you get over me, even though I treated you like shit and you moved on and started a beautiful family? How dare you? That's not love. So yeah, and this is the perception of existence that we're being fed. And unfortunately, we are not critical thinkers enough. I mean, voting for Trump and maybe for a second time coming up here in a couple weeks shows me that we are not capable of discerning trash entertainment from credible art. So
Right.
it's a slippery slope. And so that I mean, even though I was dying laughing and I was like, oh, it's the cable guy, part of it struck home of like
Right.
how much of our own lives are built from fiction.
What do you, while we're on this tangent, what do you make of the reading of this character Jake as an incel?
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
I mean, he's
I buy
basically alone. He's imagining this relationship with this woman. He feels like he's right and smarter than everybody, you know, and nobody ever really liked him.
Wow.
There's a lot
Yeah,
of it.
I can read. I can see it. I can see it.
It's interesting.
And from Amkind, we know that Kaufman is very on the pulse of now.
Sure.
I mean, and he's frustrated. So that if that is the case, that if that was a conscious thing, then I admire Kaufman's restraint and not making such an obvious point. But
Sure.
I mean, the thing is, the lonely white male is the dangerous, is the most dangerous thing in our society.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and it's mixed with this superiority complex. I mean, it's like they're lonely and horrible, and yet they think they're the greatest, and that's and everything is owed to them. So that's a very
Right.
bad combination.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, my next puzzle piece is definitely a little bit on the surface level, and I also can't quite take credit for it. Someone on Twitter said it. I wish I remember who, so I could give them credit. But when the trailer first came out, someone asked, "Is this just Get Out for white people?" And I felt it was important that we bring that up as a puzzle piece here. New young couple going to meet the parents for the first time. It also could be a Meet the Parents reference, but going to meet the parents for the first time, and dark, weird, crazy shit is afoot once they get inside that house, and you're not quite sure how things are going to go off the deep end, but you just kind of know that there's something really weird going on, and it's going to get dark quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the greatest segment of the film is the house sequence.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the strongest.
Toni Collette and David Thewlis, just incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So they brought the house down, and yeah, I mean, the thing is, I love the idea that this is Kaufman doing Meet the Parents. That is like this is like Kaufman's version of Meet the Parents. I think that's outstanding.
It works.
Yeah, it works. It really does. Yeah. So no, that's interesting. I could see that kind of a Get Out for white people. I mean, in a sense, only in premise, because
right, exactly.
so many other things.
Sure, absolutely.
But it's funny. This is kind of a weird segue, but I might as well get it out of the way quickly because I have to. I feel like it's obligatory now. So I'm going to mention two Kubrick things. I'm going to have to say The Shining.
Of course. I figured you'd bring that one up. Yeah.
Well, it's very Shining-like.
It is.
I don't think I'm crazy. I think everything's The Shining, and I think I'm right about that. I don't think that I'm just seeing what I want to see. Okay?
No, I saw it too. Yeah, I saw it too. You're on.
Yeah. Prove me wrong. I'm that meme. I'm that guy at a table, and I'm like, everything's The Shining. Prove me wrong. That's what I am right now.
I need to make that your like little avatar when you start writing reviews on the website. I need to have you at the table.
Yeah,
everything is The Shining. Prove me wrong.
Sweater. Everything's The Shining. Prove me wrong. I think because I don't think anyone can prove me wrong. And then also too, so let me expand on that briefly. It has the atmosphere of The Shining. I mean, this house is essentially the Overlook.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like the traveling there, through the driving on the way there, the conversation. They get to the house. The house is super creepy. They use wide-angle lenses to mess with our sense of perception. Not to get overly filmmaker-y on you, but there's a lot of visual techniques there to kind of messing with space, that's one of my favorite things about the Overlook Hotel is that it's an impossible building. Essentially, from the exterior shots of the hotel itself, the big golden ballroom could never actually fit inside of it.
Right.
But one of the ways that Stanley was kind of messing with us is he didn't want to do a straightforward impressionistic ghost hotel because he think that would be cheesy, right? It would separate us from the terror. So what he
Hmm.
does is he creates a realistic enough hotel that we can buy it plausibly, right? We're not always conscious of how it's ghost-like, but then he messes with our perception of space. And
Hmm.
I think that was something that Kaufman did with this house, the messing with perception of space through the lens choices and through the compositional stuff and through the lighting. So I think that was
Right.
something that was really shining like. And then also too, I gotta say, 2001: A Space Odyssey with
Hmm.
the rapid aging.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
The final sequence when Dave Bowman goes from young to old to very, very old. And I feel like that was happening in the house in a very similar fashion in I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah, no, I think that I could completely see both of those with that rapid aging for 2001 and the house itself and the atmosphere for The Shining. And yeah, I think you're onto something, Chris.
I think so. Prove me wrong. I'm that meme. That's what I feel.
Well,
I
I
hope
got
people angry
one.
letters about me. I hope people write like, never invite this person on again. What
We
is
know what he's
with
gonna
that?
say, but maybe it's like you're a recurring character, like
Maybe I'm
we
inside
got
your
your
mind.
catchphrase.
Maybe I'm inside your mind and you're just being influenced by a Kubrick movie you watched one time. And
It's
that's,
true.
I'm the manifestation of that. That's possible.
Could very well be
Okay.
true. So I got one last piece here, and it's a much lighter film, but I wanted to bring it up. It is the 2012 film Ruby Sparks with Paul
Ooh.
Dano as a writer who conjures up this girl in his story who comes to life. She's played by Zoe Kazan, and she is not just his perfect dream girl he hopes will just be with him, but she kind of has her own agency and her own thoughts and her own wishes and desires. And here in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, of course, spoiler alert, we've already said, but, Jake has basically imagined this girl into his life, into his memories. And even though he's the one doing the imagining, she doesn't really want to stick around with him. And she shoots down a lot of his ideas about art and all that kind of stuff. And she is absolutely her own person. And, I think that speaks a lot to the story itself as well as to the performance. I know Charlie in an interview said that one thing he wanted to change from the book, from my understanding, is to really give her even more of her own character. And he said that to hire an actress like Jessie Buckley and make her just an imaginary character and that's it would just not be it wouldn't be giving credit to the actress. And he wanted to really flesh her out into a full being with her own thoughts and agency.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If it wasn't, I mean that's the thing is if based on the simplicity almost of this movie, if it didn't have that element, it would be rather boring. It would be
Right.
rather normal. I mean, it's like I
Hmm.
said, this genre has been done and done very well. This is not like
Sure.
a genre that really needs Kaufman to swoop in and save it. We have a
Hmm.
lot of excellent, quasi surreal stories that are happening in modern cinema. So the fact that he was able to give that character agency, I think, was the master stroke. I really
Right.
think that's the hook. And I'm happy
Yeah.
that it came from such a place of like, well, I want to respect this actress. I want to give her something with some meat on the bone. That's fantastic.
Right.
But I think he would have
Hmm.
run into that anyway. Writing this
Yeah.
story, I think he probably would have been bored with
Oh,
it.
that's true. That's true because yeah, I mean he wants to do something unique. He wants to do something that interests him.
Yeah, and this was the most interesting part.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about the character, the girlfriend character, is that even it kind of speaks to how sad the film is, and that is like one of the puzzle pieces I have is like the work of Lars von Trier because it's
Sure.
so unabashedly sad. Like Lars von Trier doesn't give a shit if you are enjoying yourself, and
Right.
he's a hit and miss for me. Like sometimes I think he's a genius, and sometimes I think he's a pretentious windbag, and I don't
Hmm.
ever really know how I feel about the guy. But you can't deny how great some of his films are. So
Right.
But what I love about him is that he's like just the most depressed, sad sack imaginable, and he's like, you
Right.
feel this with me, and I don't
Yeah.
care if you like it. And that's I think Kaufman's in that territory.
Yeah, that's another comparison to Synecdoche, New York there, because that
Oh
is
yeah,
just,
brutally
oh my
stupid.
God. Brutal is the word.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the thing is like we. That's the thing. It's weird. I have this really weird relationship where like I think sometimes things are morbidly sad, like Adele music, But then I also think that sadness is something we should not pretend doesn't exist. So I think it has a lot to do with like how the subjects are handled. I think in pop music, I think it's morbid that we listen to like really toxic, sad things. And then I think in the arena of art, I think it's good to explore sadness as an emotion and not always have the character come out of it at the end and be chipper. And that's not the experience for many people in this life. So I think everything is in bounds in the arena of art. But sure. It's more about how it's handled. But yeah, Lars von Trier is like unabashedly sad, and as is Kaufman. But one of my favorite things about the character, as I was saying a little bit ago, is that even in this guy's brain, he can't come up with a character that fucking loves him.
Right, exactly.
Like that is a fantastic element here, to where like his own brain is like, I'm thinking about breaking up with this guy.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I want to even be here. And that's another profound and yet darkly funny side of it. I think that is because that's what's great about Kaufman is he dives so deep into sadness that it's almost funny.
Right. Totally.
Yeah, and that's kind of his milieu, if you permit me to use a French word.
It's not only allowed, it's encouraged.
Okay, good. Jejune, David. Stop being jejune. No, so that's one of the things is that it's like I just loved how like a kick in the balls sad it was.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my shit, honestly.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Unless it's just really bullshit stuff. Like if you're gonna really commit.
Exactly.
That's one of the things about Lars von Trier that I can't help but respect. Is he just mires you in the most depressing shit. And like even what is it, Melancholia really lives up to its name. Because the entire world dies. And I was like, that's the way to do it.
Hell yeah.
All right. So I know, okay, so you're out of puzzle pieces, right?
I'm out. What else do you got? Let's get through whatever you got.
All right. So yeah, this is my normal thing where I have like 40 more than you. So I'm going to just rapid fire them like I usually do, and I'll try to make it cohesive. Look, two I'm going to combine this is very specific. It's the artwork of MC Escher. Especially because of that staircase sequence where she's repeatedly walking down the stairs. And that's going to tie in to a Hitchcock reference. I think this is also maybe Kaufman's most Hitchcockian film, which is kind of a weird, I don't think it's maybe conscious, but I think we're all paying debt to Hitch all the time, and especially with films with atmosphere. And he was obsessed with staircases. Some of the great sequences of Hitchcock always take place in staircases. They're interesting visually, they're interesting metaphorically. And then right in the center of this movie, we have this MC Escher-esque stair sequence. So that's something I'd like to mention. I'd like to mention a movie called Certified Copy. I think it's a fantastic film, and it's just a movie that really subtly becomes very surreal, and it's about the ins and outs of a relationship. And so I think there's some connective tissue there. It's some phenomenal film. If you have the opportunity to see that, that's one that kind of will make your head scratch. I want to talk about an independent film from 1998, the only good thing Vincent Gallo has ever made, which is Buffalo 66.
Sure.
And I think it's the family toxicity, that dinner scene.
Right
at the core of Buffalo 66 is the most intense family dysfunction you can possibly imagine. It's masterfully done. And I think that this film, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, probably has some connective tissue there.
I think first time Vincent Gallo's come up on the podcast. So
really? I'm kind of happy that I have that title. It's fun. Super briefly, I've warmed to the Brown Bunny. I used to hate the Brown Bunny. I used to tell everyone how much I hated it, and I was wrong. It's better. I mean, it's not great. It's no Buffalo 66. Buffalo 66 is great. It's sincerely great. But Brown Bunny, I've warmed to over time. So anyway, so yeah, I'm happy that Mr. Gallo is the first time mentioned by me. I would love to mention the John Cassavetes film that is specifically talked about in the movie, which is A Woman Under the Influence.
Right.
Now, this was a very unique sequence because the main character, I'm sure her name is eluding me right now. Do you remember the girlfriend character? What was her name in the film?
Well, she's nameless. She's just young woman, but at the time, I think it was Julie because
that's right. Julie is the one they give. Like it changes too because he calls her Amy as well. I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and a couple others too.
Julie or Amy. She turns into this very famous film critic. That
Right.
this is, as a female film critic that wrote extensively about American cinema throughout the 70s and 80s, and she basically trashed A Woman Under the Influence, which is one of my favorite films, a great film by
Sure.
John Cassavetes. And in the film, the nameless girl, or Julie, actually transforms into doing a spot-on impression of this very famous film critic, and reads verbatim her review of A Woman Under the Influence. And that's
Yeah.
another little tidbit about how this guy's only real memories and thoughts are influenced by media.
Yeah,
So that was
and it also kind of speaks to this creation, like, talking back to him, and because he loves the movie that she's trashing, right?
right, exactly. But that's
Yeah.
the thing too, is like, I think that that's an interesting idea. Like, the kind of like, I know this is going to sound really funny. I didn't plan this, but kind of my experience with Brown Bunny, to where you think you have these concrete ideas, but then you read something or you see something or something. Here's this where this is where it's really unique. This is what I struggle with. Do I really think something is great? Or am I just accepting that the general consensus is that it's great?
Well, yeah, that is a very interesting point. Like, especially when you're seeing something that you maybe don't know what the general consensus is, and
Yeah,
then you watch it, you're sitting there for a minute and you're thinking what you're thinking, and then you're like, oh shit, okay, do I go to Letterbox now and see that everybody else hates this or loves it? It's the opposite of what I just thought. Like, it's
right.
like, where does my thought come from? And am I right, even though right isn't even a real thing?
Right. It's your experience, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about it? And
Yeah.
the thing is that do I experience films academically, or do I experience them as they're intended emotionally? I feel
Mhm.
like I always have this very schizophrenic relationship with films, being a filmmaker, being a film appreciator, being a film critic. Yeah, I try to experience films on the emotional level and register them in that way, how they're
Yeah.
intended. But
Mhm.
I have this very academic approach at times, and it makes it challenging. And it also makes it hard to actually determine what I really feel.
Sure.
So it takes a lot of contemplation, and I try to go with my gut instinct. But also, too, thinking about a movie or having somebody else who's educated shine light on a movie, and maybe they say something that you didn't particularly catch, that can transform your opinion. So
Right.
it's always this feeling of like, well, am I being genuine by changing my opinion? And the answer, I think, ultimately is yes. If you get
Absolutely.
new pieces of information that change your view, then I think you should change. You should not, be steadfast on some juvenile view of the movie.
My views have changed mid-episode,
Yeah,
while recording this podcast, so
yeah. And
absolutely.
there's hypocrisy. I mean, you're probably thinking about all the times I made excellent cases and I changed your mind. This is probably what you're referring to.
Right. Totally. That's exactly it.
I'm just messing with you. All right, so my last really fast ones. I'm surprised you didn't say this one yourself. I thought for sure you were going to get it, but Mother.
Mm. I did think about it, yeah, I bring it up too much, but yeah, I did
Oh,
absolutely think
that
about
doesn't
that.
bother me. That's fine.
Yeah.
I say the same movie every time I'm on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I mean, I think again, Darren Aronofsky has fantastically big balls, and I
Mhm.
really love his balls. I love how large they are and swollen they are, and I really appreciate him because he will just make movies like Noah is one of my favorite movies of the decade,
Yeah.
and I think it's outstanding. It's ridiculous, and I love
Mhm.
every ridiculous second of it. It's basically The Shining on a Boat, David.
I think you've said that exact phrase on this
I think I
podcast
have.
before.
I'm pretty sure I have. In fact, I'm certain I have. Anyway, and then I'd like to mention The End of the Tour.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, that is because I even with Antkind, I mentioned a David Foster Wallace influence, and now I'm actually
Mhm.
certain of it. I wasn't really sure if it was in kind of Kaufman's ethos, but I really think that it is in his ethos. And
Mhm.
the on the road element, the two people talking element, the conversation about David Foster Wallace right in the center of I'm thinking of ending things. And I think that the work of David Foster Wallace in general, but also specifically the cinematic rendering of that work in The End of the Tour is a big influence on this. I'd say
Mhm.
even maybe consciously.
Yeah.
Um, my second to last reference is going to be a great Mike Nichols movie called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I think that, again, is just like the pressure cooker, small chamber piece type feeling of people talking in a room, and the intensity of those conversations and the atmosphere that feels almost tangible and palpable. And then my final one is Citizen Kane.
Okay.
And I think it's because the pig filled with maggots is essentially Jake's Rosebud.
Sure. Yeah.
That's
actually one of my favorite things in the movie is that whole sequence, and not because it's so strange, but because it makes so much sense when you think about it. This animated version of that horrific pig story, it's animated in the style of his favorite ice cream commercial. And so it's like his favorite thing and his most fearful thing kind of combining to be his personal guide into the afterlife.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do feel that he dies at the end. He has some type of heart attack or something in the car.
Yeah.
And then we kind of go into that fantasy land. But that's the final moments of his brain flickering. And you're right. I think the combination of the most horrific thing mixed with his favorite thing, the pig is that kind of link to his past. Link to who he really is.
And to be clear, it was insane as it was unfolding. It was only after the credits rolled that I'm like putting that together in my head.
Yeah, that was something that, I think that it's so kind of fantastically strange that you don't really put all the pieces together right away. You just kind of feel that.
Yeah.
And I love how it kind of goes there and teeters on the absurd, and I love the old people makeup that's like purposefully bad.
Yeah.
Just like in A Beautiful Mind, how it's like that looks like Jennifer Connelly. That is not an old lady. So yeah, there was a lot to unpack there, but I feel like that in a weird way, a cartoon pig filled with maggots was his Rosebud.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we got a lot of puzzle pieces here, so I'm going to do the finished puzzle, and we'll get into some closing thoughts. Finished puzzle includes Through a Glass Darkly, No Country for Old Men, The Exterminating Angel, Eraserhead, other David Lynch films as well, 8.5, Charlie Kaufman's own work, including Eternal Sunshine, Synecdoche, New York, and Aunt Kind, The Cable Guy, Get Out and Meet the Parents, The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Ruby Sparks, Lars von Trier films, M.C. Escher, Hitchcock films, Certified Copy, Buffalo 66, A Woman Under the Influence, Mother, The End of the Tour, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and Citizen Kane. So, Kris, do you have any other thoughts about this movie? Any major things that we didn't quite get to as we were going through these pieces?
I would just like to take a moment to say that the best puzzle piece is the Cable Guy, I think. Yeah.
I might agree with you on this one, Kris.
I mentioned 2001: A Space Odyssey and Citizen Kane, and I still think that the Cable Guy is the most apt of all pieces. I'm just messing with you. So
certainly for the character,
it's pretty good. It's like I think he probably saw it on cable one night, and he was like, "I'm gonna make the sequel to the Cable Guy." I think that was in Charlie's mind. Now, no, I think we touched on it. Like I said, I was surprised by the film. I think it succeeds in many areas. I think overall, from a screenplay standpoint, it's somewhat of Kaufman light. But I'm very happy that I got to see him kind of stretch his directorial muscles. And I think that he's much more in command of atmosphere and what goes unsaid. I was a little disappointed in the simplicity of the overall point and story, but I do think that it was ingenious to shift the perspective. So I'm kind of torn on it as an overall piece. I don't think it's the best or my favorite, but I think it's a step forward for him in a lot of avenues, in a lot of ways. I think he's one of the most talented people working today, and we need to give him more opportunities. And I will always support him, as I know you will.
Sure.
And so, yeah, he challenged me, and I don't think you can ask for much more from an artist. He's not being Billy Idol playing the same song for the next 30 years. He's not making adaptation over and over again, or making Being John Malkovich over and over again. So I really admire the risks that he's taking. Sometimes it works a little bit less, more so than others, but there's a lot to admire here about this movie.
Absolutely. Only last thing I wanted to mention, you mentioned how big a laugh you got from the Beautiful Mind speech. I just wanted to kind of give a quick shout out to my biggest laugh of the movie, which is not his funniest film by any stretch, but my biggest laugh was when she's upstairs with Jake's dad, and he makes some kind of dirty joke. I forget what it is. And from across the house, you hear Toni Collette start cackling. And I laughed so hard at that moment.
Isn't he kind of like, well, fucking? Like I think just fucking.
Right, I think that's what it was. She's like, ha ha ha.
Yeah. Yeah, they're spectacular in that.
They're so good.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh
a
my god.
fantastically casted film.
Well, I think that about does it. We could easily talk about this movie for another hour, but Kris, what is another movie you saw recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
So I'm a kind of a list person, as you know. I recently finished the 100 greatest films of the 21st century as voted by the BBC, and I was writing reviews for each one. And we're going to be doing something similar on the Piecing It Together website, where I'm going to be doing kind of reviews and essays. At some point between now and the end of time, we will definitely get that going. But I recently started the 2012 Sight and Sound list of the greatest films ever made, and so I've been watching some oldies that are on that list. But the film that I would recommend the highest right now, that I think is probably one of the most underseen, is a movie called Tuki Buki, and it's a Senegalese film from Africa, and it was made in the 1970s, 1973, and that Senegal got its independence from France in the 60s. And only then could they start making films about what life was really like in their country and in their home. And it's shocking and it's revolutionary and it's bold. It's kind of like basically it's like Easy Rider for Africa. So I would take a look at it. It has a lot of extreme animal death. I would give a little note about that because it is very challenging to watch, but this is a part of their time and place and culture that we are not exposed to typically. And the film unflinchingly looks at that. So take a look at that film. It's brilliant and it will change you.
All right. Well, why don't you tell people where they could find you and your work?
So I am always working. You can find me on the social media platforms, of course, just my name, which David will put up on the post. You can go to KrisKrainock.com to see a lot of my other work. I'm finally finishing up a movie within the next month or so, a film called Bizzarro e Fantastico that I shot in Rome, Italy, and Paris, France last October before all of COVID shut down the world. And we have a lot more things coming out as well. So yeah, check out the new film when it's released, and you can see all of my work online. I'm always around.
Well, Kris, I'm glad to finally be getting you back on the show these 2 episodes, and I look forward to whatever we cover next time.
Same, man. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Neglia, and I am the host of the Next Best Picture podcast, part of the Film Entertainment Awards website, nextbestpicture.com. On our show, we explore all year long what is possibly going to win Best Picture at the Oscars. We do this by conducting interviews with people within the film industry, holding weekly reviews of the latest theatrical releases, and on our main show, where we dive into various different topics, answer your fan questions, and also do our best to explore Oscar history's past in hopes that it will tell us something new for this upcoming award season race. We hope that you will join us on all of the various podcasting networks. We look forward to seeing you over at nextbestpicture.com.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about I'm thinking of ending things. Obviously, we could have went on for another hour or two. There's just so much to talk about with this movie, but I think we hopefully did it justice. And hopefully it's not another however many years it's been since the last Charlie Kaufman film, and we'll be able to do another one of his movies in the near future. As a matter of fact, we are doing another one of his movies in the very near future, although it's one of our Missing Pieces episode. We are taking a look at Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That's coming up next week. So hopefully a new one, though, too. I'm always looking forward to do Charlie Kaufman projects. So thank you as always for listening. If you enjoy piecing it together, you can rate and review us over on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. Those reviews help make sure to get the show heard, although from what I hear, it doesn't really help anything, and that's just like this big myth within the circles of podcasting. But hey, do it anyway. We appreciate the feedback, and we like knowing that you're out there listening. So appreciate all kinds of reviews. And, if you just want to get in touch, you could always just tweet at us or whatever, at PiecingPod. Get in touch. If you ever want to join me for an episode as well, get in touch with me too, because there's plenty of upcoming movies we need to do episodes on, and I always like getting new co-hosts on the show. So that does it for today. I'm going to leave you with a piece of music as always. And at first I was going to play a piece of music from my new self-titled album that's coming out on October 4th that I finally finished this week. Yes, I've been updating you guys over the past few months about how this album was in development and is coming soon, and now it is finally finished and will come out on October 4th, and there will be a special episode the week before it comes out of Piecing It Together, taking a look at the album. So keep your ears peeled. Is that a thing you can do for that? But instead of playing that, though, I think we'll celebrate the whole Charlie Kaufman-ness of this episode one last time by playing something that I made a few years back when the fundraiser for Anomalisa was happening. And the people who were running the fundraiser asked if anybody had any kind of Charlie Kaufman-related art that could be used as some of the perks for donating to the fundraiser. And so I decided to make a little Charlie Kaufman rap song, and it's called Anomalisa, and I sent it to them, and they seemed to love it. I think that they said there were some kind of like potential rights issues with all the name checks that I did with all the various Charlie Kaufman projects, so they couldn't send it out as part of the thing, although I think they did share it at the time from my SoundCloud, and hopefully a lot of Charlie Kaufman fans enjoyed it, but now you're going to get to hear it. So this is called Anomalisa, and hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together next week.
Well, first things first, thank you for backing. We got it all funded, now it's time to get cracking. If things get weird, it's all part of the plan, cause this came from the mind of Charlie Kaufman. Me and John Malkovich, Eternal Sunshine of the Mind adaptation is my favorite movie of all time. Synecdoche, New York was off the chain. Now it's time to see what else is inside this man's brain. Anomalisa, we're all patiently waiting to see it come to life in stop motion animation. Brought to the world by Dan Harmon and the crew, and it wouldn't be possible without all of you. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts. It's because of all of you that this got kick-started. I'm out for now, looking forward to meet you in the animated world of Anomalisa.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.